The Department of Public Health and Human Services is pleased to bring you Aging Horizons. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, fraud, legal issues, veterans benefits, and caregiving. Aging Horizons is a program dedicated to inform and prepare Montanans on these timely issues, making a difference to you and your loved ones. Here now is today's program host.
Today on Aging Horizons, we'll be speaking with Susan Gobbs, a contract attorney for the Department of Public Health and Human Services, all about estate planning. What is it? Why you should do it? What are some of the important documents you should do, and where you can get it done? We'll be talking about the legal document clinics coming up this summer and all of the forms that you might want to consider doing. So make sure you stay tuned to today on Aging Horizons.
Final call from like 566.
Hello, gentlemen. May I see your Montana Real IDs?
IDs? Why, I'm Captain Meriwether Lewis.
And I'm Captain William Clark.
Hang on, I see more than one William Clark.
It's the real me, I promise.
Discover more at mtrealid.gov. Available now.
Montana Real ID. It's the real me.
And me.
Don't forget, today you're going to Grandma's house.
Oh man, I better grab a jacket. It's always so cold at Grandma's house.
I know, honey. Grandma and Grandpa are having a hard time keeping the house warm lately with all the medical bills.
Oh really? Are they gonna be okay?
I think so. They're going to ask Energy Share for some help.
Energy Share, helping Montanans facing energy emergencies. 1-888-779-7589.
Elder abuse is a growing problem, and it's happening right here in our Montana communities. At least 1 in 10 older adults are victims of physical or emotional abuse, financial exploitation, or neglect. To get help or report elder abuse, call your local area agency on aging or Adult Protective Services at 1-844-277-9300.
Good care is your right. In Montana, there's over 11,000 beds in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. If you or a family member needs assistance or help in obtaining information about care issues and placement options, call 1-800-332-2272. If you or a family member need information about Montana's long-term care resident rights, or if you need help solving a problem or a complaint about a nursing home or an assisted living facility, call us at 800-332-2272.
Welcome to Aging Horizons, brought to you by the Department of Public Health and Human Services. I'm Katie Lovell, and I'll be your host today. Today we're speaking with Susan Gobbs. She's an attorney with the Department of Public Health and Human Services on contract. And you're going to be talking to us all about estate planning.
Estate planning, it's a fun process.
So when people say estate planning, what does that even mean?
Well, we all have things. And when you die, you have to decide what happens to your things. And if you do not plan your estate, it will end up where the state has to step in, or your family has to try and figure out what your wishes were, what you wanted to have done. And so it's very important, I think, for people of all ages to have estate planning done, but certainly for seniors.
So who should have an estate plan? Is it just people over 60? Who is it?
Well, I think a lot of people think estate planning is only for rich people, and that's really not true. All sorts of people need to have estate planning, because we aren't talking just about what happens when you die. We are talking about what happens when you're no longer able to make certain decisions about your medical care or your finances, and you want to give a roadmap to your family. If you want to be cremated, it's important for your family to know that. If you want your car to go to your grandchild, it's important for your family to know that. And for the best way for them to know that is for you to put that in writing.
When someone is looking at doing an estate plan, what kind of things are involved? What does a person need to start thinking about when they approach the process?
I think they need to think about what they have and how they want to leave it. You can talk about your real estate, so where you live, how you want your house to be disposed of. You can think about your family heirlooms, great Aunt Sadie's gravy ladle. If you don't put that in the will, maybe there's a fight about that.
Sure.
In the cases that I see, rarely do we fight about money. We fight about the sentimental things. And so therefore, it's really important, if you have strong feelings about how you want to be remembered, how you want your things to be distributed, how you want to be treated. When you can no longer make your own decisions, that's when estate planning is important.
Sure. How do you know what to think about when you're choosing an estate plan? So I think a lot of times the words like trusts or corporations or
right.
you know, 5 wishes versus advance directives. How do you know what's right for you?
Well, again, research is an important thing. You can certainly come to us, and we will talk more about that later, about what you can do to lay out your estate planning. But I think the basic first thing to do is to think about what it is you want, who you trust in your life to do what you want to have done if you can no longer articulate your wishes. And it's important to know that there are certain documents under the law that have more standing than other documents.
Sure. There are estate planning documents that really, I think people of all ages certainly need to think about, you know, someone my age, someone younger, anyone who has children. Those documents would be like the powers of attorney. Can you talk a little bit about what you'd think about when you're thinking about doing one of those?
Sure. We have 2 types of powers of attorney that we generally work with. One is a medical power of attorney. Sure. So in that situation, you are giving someone, hopefully someone that you trust, the ability to make certain medical decisions for you when you cannot make them yourself.
Sure.
And so it's very important. And again, this is not just for the senior population. You're 25 years old. You're in a serious car accident. You're unconscious. Who has the authority to make those decisions for you? You're an adult. It's not necessarily your parents. If you're not married, it's not a spouse. So that is important stuff. It's important from a financial viewpoint. So again, you get hurt. You're unconscious. Who can pay the bills?
Sure.
Who can deal with the insurance company? Those sorts of things that are very important in anybody's life. If you have minor children, you need a trust in a will, I believe, to best serve the needs of your family. You need to talk about who's going to be the guardian of your kids, who's going to handle the money. So it's not something where you wait until you're on your deathbed to write your will or to make appropriate arrangements.
Yeah, absolutely. When someone is thinking about doing these estate planning documents, where do they go? Are there a certain type of lawyer that does this thing? I know there's a special program at the state that does it. Where else can people go?
There are many private, very, very good and competent private estate planning attorneys. You can find them through the state bar. You can find them on the web. You can find them through the phone book. These folks are very experienced in dealing with very complex processes. And not every senior that we encounter is appropriate for our program.
Sure.
Our program is for people who have simple estate planning needs. If you need a trust because you have a disabled child or you have another reason to need a trust, we don't do trusts. We don't do complicated ones where you own half of Blaine County. That is not an appropriate thing for us to do. What we aim for is people who have not a whole lot of resources and who need to have just basic estate planning done. So there are many different programs that people can go to. Obviously, I'm fond of our program, amongst other reasons, because it is free. Sure. And we can provide services to people who legitimately cannot afford to hire an attorney to do their estate plan, nor do they really need to because their estate planning is pretty simple.
Absolutely. So when we come back after the break, we're going to talk about sort of the keystone documents that our program does and that a lot of people think of when they do estate planning. So that's the wills, the powers of attorney, the beneficiary deed, declaration of homestead, and the living will. So when we get back, you're not going to miss those because we'll go through each of the documents, sort of explain what they do and why you might want to consider doing them. So make sure you stay tuned after the break.
You mean I can get help paying my prescription drug premiums?
Let me get this straight. I could be eligible for help with my family's prescription premiums even though I own my own home? and our assets won't be counted.
If you're a Montana resident enrolled in the Medicare prescription drug program, you could be eligible for help paying your premiums. Call or visit the Big Sky RX website today to find out, even if you think you're over income.
What do you know about that? I'm eligible.
All right, I'm talking with Duncan Adams from the Attorney General's office. Duncan, something that's happening during this crisis, this foreclosure crisis, is that there's scams out there. I mean, hard to believe that people would take advantage of someone that's already down, but it happens a lot, doesn't it?
It does happen a lot, and they're pretty blatant about it. There are I've heard advertisements on TV and on the radio for people that are scam organizations. You really need to be suspicious when you find stuff on the internet. You know, want to be really suspicious if you find somebody who's willing to help you for money up front. That's usually a big red flag. We're able to help all aspects of our program, and we're free.
Right. So essentially they're saying, hey, we'll take this load off your shoulders, we'll fill out the paperwork, we'll deal and negotiate for you.
And they'll be really easy to get a hold of at first, and then they'll just disappear.
Boy, be suspicious of that. And remember, this is a free service. KeepMyMontanaHome.com.
I'm Attorney General Tim Fox. Nowadays, all of you have to worry about cybersecurity. Something as simple as visiting pirate websites can put your computer at risk. Hackers use pirate websites to infect your computer and steal your ID and financial information, or even take over your computer camera without you knowing it. Don't let hackers into your house. Be careful with the websites you visit and warn your kids on how to stay safe online. To learn more, visit my website.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. Today we're speaking about estate planning with Susan Gubbs. She's a contract attorney with the Department of Public Health and Human Services. Susan, let's go through each of the documents that we recommend that people do when they think about estate planning. So let's start with the powers of attorney. I know you said that there are two.
Right. I think the powers of attorney in a lot of ways are the most important documents that we do. The medical power of attorney, as I said previously, is one where you give another person the ability to make certain decisions for you when you can't make them. So these can encompass end-of-life decisions, but we usually do a separate living will that talks about end-of-life, this end-of-life situation and what you want to have done. The financial power of attorney gives somebody the ability to manage your finances if you can no longer do so. Now, it can be really difficult for people to let go and let somebody else do this for them. Sure. The thing that's important about a power of attorney is that you don't give away your rights. You still have the ability to make your medical decisions, make your financial decisions till you can't do so. Sure. And an agent, which is the person that you give the authority to, is supposed to stand beside you and help you. They're not supposed to stand in front of you and make decisions for you.
Sure.
So it's very important that you trust the person that you're going to give this authority to.
Does it have to be the same person? Do you have to name the same person as your medical or as your financial?
You do not, and in fact, we frequently encounter families where they have a child who's an accountant and a child who might be in the medical profession. And they will split that. And the kid that's the accountant will be the financial power of attorney, and the child who has the medical knowledge may be the medical power of attorney. We don't recommend that you list more than one person at a time. So it's not good to put 2 or 3 or 4 or 7 kids on there and ask them to decide what to do. Usually we recommend one person, and then you can name successors.
When we talk about a power of attorney, I know a lot of people are concerned about exploitation, and we see that a lot in our program. And I think there's this belief that a power of attorney, once you sign it, is forever, but that's really not true.
That is not true, and you can revoke it at any point. So if you sense that somebody is starting to use your assets in a way that you think is not appropriate, it's a simple one-page revocation, and they no longer have that authority. So I think it's very important to understand that there are safety nets should you perhaps choose the wrong person and it becomes apparent that it's the wrong person. You can, in fact, change your agent.
Absolutely. And then when we talk about that medical power of attorney, I know that we've run into some issues with HIPAA compliance, so that's an important thing to think about.
Right. HIPAA, which is a federal law that is supposed to protect your individually identifiable medical information is a really good law, but it's pretty restrictive.
Sure.
And that means that your kids can't walk into your doctor's office and get a copy of your medical records. So you need to have a document that gives them that authority under HIPAA.
Absolutely. We talked about the living will just sort of briefly, and that we usually do it as the second document, but what is a living will?
A living will, basically, we have a living will appointment and we have just a living will. In a living will, you say, there are certain things I want done or I don't want done, and I give my doctor the authority to make the decisions. With the appointment, you ask the medical professionals to work with someone you appoint to make those decisions.
Absolutely. And those are filed. They can be filed with the state registry, correct?
Right. They can be filed with the state registry. We also recommend that you take them to your hospital, to your nursing home, to your doctor, so everybody is aware of what your wishes are.
Sure. The next document, I think, is what people think of when they think about estate planning. This is usually the one document they ask for in the beginning, is the will.
Right. And in my mind, the will, in a lot of ways, is the easiest one for people to do.
Sure.
Because they know that at this point they are no longer living, and it's just a matter of distributing their things. It is not as emotionally fraught as the powers of attorney. So with a will, you list stuff. You don't have to list everything you own. We also do a tangible list of personal property. That's where you list Great Aunt Sadie's gravy ladle or the piano or whatever, and that can be changed anytime you want to. But a will is a fairly simple document that just simply says who you are, who you're married to, who your kids are, and how you want whatever assets that survive you to be distributed.
That makes sense. We get a lot of people that come to us that have property. So there are two additional documents that we suggest in that reason, and that's the beneficiary deed and the Declaration of Homestead. Right. And what's the Declaration of Homestead do?
Declaration of Homestead protects your property in which you live. It does not protect property that where you don't live from certain kinds of creditors. So it would protect your property up to a $250,000 limit from credit card companies, medical debt, anything that's not secured by the property. It does not protect the property from a mortgage, from a reverse mortgage, from a contractor's lien, anything that is secured by the home. But a lot of times I think people are very concerned about medical debt, and they should be, and this is one way that they can protect their residents up to a certain dollar amount from being foreclosed on because they have this debt.
Absolutely. And then the beneficiary deed, that's a way to transfer property, correct?
That is a way to transfer property. You fill out a beneficiary deed prior to your death. It is registered at the clerk and recorder's office, as is the homestead declaration. It does not go into effect until after your death, when your heirs come in with proof of your death. Now, it can be a really good thing if you want to, say, keep the family cabin in the family, because it has a longer creditor period than you would under a normal will. So when you do a beneficiary deed, you have to think about what the eventual disposition of the property is.
Sure. What are you going to do with it?
Exactly. If it's the family cabin, you're going to keep it. Beneficiary deed's really good. If it's your house and you know your kids are going to want to sell it, probably should go through the will.
Absolutely. Okay, we just got a rundown on all those important documents, and when we get back, we're going to tell you one of the services available through the state, the Legal Service Developer Program, how you can actually get those documents done for free. It's at no cost to you. So make sure you stay tuned, because you're not going to want to miss that.
Crackling fire, good warm. Forest fire, bad warm. Keeping the home fires burning, good warm. Watching the home burn, bad warm. Your family deserves the kind of warm that comes from being able to pay the heating bills. Whether you're a homeowner or a renter, the Low Income Energy Assistance Program may be able to help. Call today to find out if you're eligible. We can help you get comfortable with winter's high energy costs.
Montana is a very rural state with very small communities, and I think it's very important that we get it out in those smaller communities that yes, our older adults are having falls. It's very important to prevent these falls, and now we have a program, Stepping On, that can help them with that and teach them to have a better quality of life, live longer independently by themselves or with their spouses. We can use the stepping on program to help prevent those falls and to make people's quality of life better.
I think the most pleasant surprise when we turned 65 and signed up for Medicare Part B was finding out about our Welcome to Medicare preventive visit.
It was free, and it gave us the opportunity to visit with our doctors and establish a plan for our health going forward.
They reviewed our medical history, measured our height, weight, blood pressure, and counseled us on other risk factors.
To learn more about Medicare's free or low-cost preventive and wellness benefits, call your local SHIP counselor at 800-551-3191. I mentioned it's free, right?
Twice.
You sure you can see?
Yeah.
Are the headlights on?
Yes.
Do we need chains?
No.
Need to slow down?
You know, you're probably right.
Winterize your vehicle, then winterize your mind. Stay clear of snowplows until they pull over, and it's safe to pass. Drive safely and arrive alive.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. We're talking about estate planning, what you need to know, what documents you should be considering, and now where you can get some of the services that we've just talked about. So, Susan, before we do that, I want to just talk about probate. I think people hear that word and they get really afraid because it sounds like it might be scary, but it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be, and not every will needs to be probated. It's a case-by-case basis depending on who the heirs are and how it's all set up. We also in Montana have a small estate probate procedure, which is even less complicated than a regular probate. Sure. So people want to avoid probate at all costs, and that's not always the right way to handle their estate.
Okay. And there are a few triggers in Montana that you know whether or not an estate is going to need to be probated, and there are at least two that I'm thinking of, but what are they?
You look at the complexity of the estate, whether, for example, we're transferring real estate, sure, whether we have multiple heirs that are left certain things under the probate. A lot of people don't have a very large estate because their bank accounts are payable on death to their kids. Their brokerage accounts are transferable on death to their kids. And so a lot of people think, oh, I've got this big estate, but they've already taken care of a lot of the disposition of their things before they filled out a will, and the will is not necessarily containing their entire estate.
Absolutely. We talked about these documents, how important they are, and now I'd like to talk about the program that you and I both work with, how people can actually get in touch with us and get these documents done. Right. So there are three ways. There are the phone clinics, the teleclinics, and the in-person legal document clinics. So let's talk about the phone clinic process. How does that work for someone?
Well, first off, they call you at 444-7787 to do an intake to see whether this is an appropriate program for them. Then that information is conveyed to very experienced legal professionals that I work with, and they can talk to a paralegal who will help them work through their process. They fill out their documents. There's back and forth. There's a lot of discussion. Inevitably, those documents end up in my inbox. I review them for their appropriateness and whether or not they're complete. And then we send them out to people. They have them notarized. They never meet the people that they work with. And for some seniors, that can be a disconcerting thing. But for a lot of seniors, particularly in rural Montana, it's a very efficient way for them to get their estate planning needs met.
Absolutely. If you have a hard time leaving your home, if you just feel more comfortable doing something remotely, the phone clinics are a really great way to go.
Right.
The next option is the teleclinic, and right now we have one operational in Helena. How does that process work?
Okay, again, they would call the area office of aging, which would probably call you, and then they can go down to the Rocky Mountain Development Center, and there is a computer. And they can see the person they're working with. There's a webcam, and there's, again, back and forth. It's a little bit more personal than the phone thing because they can actually see the person working on their documents. But again, the person is not right there in the room. It is a remote situation where test driving this one in Helena because we intend to put several of them in very remote communities in Indian country and also in very rural parts of Montana. And this is, again, another way to get rural folks who have limited resources and access to medical services, get them the ability to get their legal documents done.
Sure. And those communities will be adding more as the year goes on, and if people are interested, they can always call the office and we can let them know if there's one coming to a community near them.
Exactly.
We have in-person legal document clinics, and that's a really cool service that we're both a huge part of, and we have lots of great volunteers that do that all year round.
Right.
Can you just explain that process for folks?
We will set up in a community. We do a lot of advanced planning. We work with the local senior centers, the local areas on aging. People call, they have intakes done. We screen them as to whether or not this clinic is good for them. Then we will show up in a community for a 2-day stint. We will train people on certain legal and other issues prior, our volunteers. We will train them the day prior to the clinic. Then we set up. We will have anywhere from 6 to 12 legal professionals that are all volunteers. Some are paralegals, some are attorneys. They will sit and do one-on-one work with an individual or a couple and go through and help them with all the documents we have previously talked about. And we will do this all day long. And it's a really lovely service because when people walk out the door, they have their wills, they have their power of attorneys, they have the documents that they need, and some peace of mind that they have done this chore that they have probably put off for way too long.
Absolutely. Everything's notarized, everything's put together in a nice packet with instructions on what to do with them in case you've forgotten by the end of the day.
Right.
And we get some really great support for that program by local attorneys. We've had local county of attorneys. We've had attorneys travel from hundreds of miles to participate in those clinics.
And I think it's a really lovely thing because, again, it's a service that is very concrete. The lawyers like it because it gives them an opportunity to give back. People love it because, again, they walk away with their packet and they feel better when they walk out the door than they did when they walked in.
Absolutely. So this year the clinics are April, they're in Hamilton, May we're in Glasgow, June we're in Crow Agency, July we're in Wilsaw, August we're in Libby, and October we're in Billings. So if you'd like to sign up for a clinic, make sure you give my office a call. We're going to put the number on the screen again. You do need an appointment ahead of time, so make sure you get in, give us a call ahead of that. We accept about 45 to 60 people a clinic depending on the clinic and how many volunteers we get in the community.
And Billings is asking for a double header, so we'll see how that works because Billings would like us to do 2 days in a row.
Right. There never seems to be enough spots at those clinics.
Exactly.
So if you're interested in attending one of those clinics, make sure you give our office a call. If you're interested in doing a phone clinic, make sure you give our office a call. If you're interested in teleclinic, again, give our office a call. Thank you for tuning in. And Susan, thank you so much for giving us all that great information.
No problem.
Special thanks to the Department of Public Health and Human Services for their continued support. Hosts on Aging Horizons are program specialists at the Montana Office on Aging. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions. For more information about Aging Horizons, call the Department of Public Health and Human Services toll-free at 800-332-2272.